Hello, it's Peter Richardson from Counterpoint Research here. Another Counterpoint conversation. I'm delighted to be here with Ajit Ninan from Meta. Ajit, maybe you can give a quick introduction to what you do over there.
Sure. So I work on display architecture and specifically in the area of perceptual imaging and trying to design displays with perception in mind.
Okay. Now we're here at the DSCC AR/VR Summit, and Ajit, you did a really interesting presentation where you talked a lot about some of the limits or the limitations that we have with current AR/VR products and human perception. Now, one of the interesting things you talked about was that a lot of the standards that have been developed over the years within the display industry aren't quite up to where we need them to be for the developments in AR/VR. Maybe you can just sort of expand on that.
Sure, yeah. I mean, a lot of the metrics that we've been using and also the way we've been designing displays have been around the idea of a display that's far away from you, right? But now we're actually wearing these displays, so it's a wearable display. And we're also trying to build perceptual engines, right? We're trying to create an experience for the user that these devices can mingle with the real world and give you information about the real world. So one is the way we design these displays need to be more with the idea that we're trying to present an image to the brain that's consistent with the world, which is not the way a traditional display is driven. For example, row scan updates and being able to keep the display on for the full frame time, having a very low frame rate, completely acceptable with a display like a TV. But when it's on your face, when your head moves, all the dynamics of head motion suddenly break the standard display design rules. So, we're trying to encourage the industry to start thinking about, head motion, so the temporal aspects of displays, and then also the spatial aspects of displays, right? So how do you do resolution? How do you consider resolution and designing the system for ideal resolution? So when it comes to all of these things, one of the things that turns out is that all the metrics that we've been using don't really allow us to think about what's the experience like for the user. It's all about, like, for example, this delta E metric that is a patch-based color metric. It doesn't really work for pixel-wise comparisons, right? So we've got to come up with some new standards, some new metrics so that all of us are speaking the same language because it's easy to say numbers, but they don't actually mean the same thing. Depending on what you're trying to measure. So we'd like to start standardizing on that and working with the industry and like they say, rising tide floats all boats. So let's help each other out, standardize on how we design these things, standardize on metrics, and figure out what's the best experience for the customer in the end.
All right, that's super helpful. One last question. Where do you feel we are in terms of the development towards having real true AR type products? Yeah. I mean, you guys have introduced something in the last week, which is very interesting, but I think that's fair to say that's a kind of a development product. Where do you think we are? I mean, what does the future look like for you?
Yeah, so I mean, you can see the display industry is understanding some of these design methodologies better and better. And so some of these are getting incorporated into the display technology until, there's the North Star, and then there's taking it a step at a time until we get to that North Star. Obviously, it's not going to be what we call the touring display, where you can't tell the difference between the real world and a projected hologram that you're looking at. So of course, we're a ways from that. But do we need that level of immersion before we can give you a useful experience? Absolutely not. There are steps towards that. And so there's going to be different levels of products. And with just the introduction of AI and the usefulness of AI, we don't need to be at that North Star right away, but we want to move towards that goal, right? So giving you enough information to make it useful is the first step, right? User experience is what we always consider first.
All right. Ajit, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for the
presentation.
Thank you.
And that's great. So Counterpoint Conversations, checking out. See you next time.